Christmas is less than 2 weeks away, but the bad news? The fiscal cliff isn't far behind. House Speaker Boehner and President Obama met last night to discuss possible solutions for averting disaster, but so far nothing. It's clear compromises have to be made, but one GOP congressman is going out on a huge limb. He's ditching Grover Norquist's tax pledge to back raising revenues, and he says it's the conservative thing to do. Joining us now to explain why, Virginia Congressman Scott Rigell. Appreciate your being here, sir. And I should point out that you told voters before your re-election, I think it was February, maybe even January of this year, that you had signed Grover Norquist's tax pledge and that it no longer made sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Why did you change your mind? And I got to imagine that you're feeling a lot of heat from your colleagues in Congress.
Well, I'll be happy to answer that directly, but I first, of course, just want to express our deep condolences with the families who lost a loved one today. The anguish is really unimaginable. Now, on to this important topic. I did distance myself or remove myself as a signer of the pledge back in February. The 2nd District of Virginia sent a businessman to Washington, and overwhelmingly we have an expense problem, and any agreement that I vote for must reduce spending. Now, with that said, Adam, I've done an analysis of our tax revenue side of things, and we haven't been at this level of revenue since 1959.
Let me stop you right there, because I'm going to give the numbers. It's really simple. On average, the government collects about 17% tax revenue to GDP. We're spending right now 24% on average of GDP.
That's correct.
It doesn't add up. That's why you said we have to raise taxes?
Well, no, there's more nuance than that. The level of spending that we ourselves as Republicans have voted for is actually higher than the level of revenue that we've locked ourselves into as a result of the Americans for Tax Reform pledge. And to me, certainly what it means to be a conservative, among other things, is that we pay our bills and that we vote to have the same level of revenue that we ourselves have voted for in expenditures. So that's a critical distinction, and of course it means part of this agreement absolutely must have sharp reductions in spending. That's why I'm pleased to stand with the Speaker. I think he's done the right thing by putting revenues on the table, provided, of course, they're in the right ratio to expense cuts.
December 12th, you sent this letter, I'm going to quote from it, to your colleagues in the Congress, and you said, "We need to examine what it means to be a fiscal conservative. Surely, in addition to fighting for smaller government, it means paying for the size and scope of government for which we have voted." We hear this message so often from both sides. They might raise taxes, but then they continue to raise spending to an even greater amount. How do you break that cycle? Because most people, I think, in the citizenry don't believe it will ever be broken.
Well, unless there's really a structural aspect to this, to where the expenses are truly tied into any incremental revenues that are generated through tax reform, it'll lose my support. I'm making the case, and it's not easy to thread this needle, that expenses must come down sharply, but we ourselves, I think, within our own conference have really a fiscal math issue we have to deal with, that this tax code that is layered at the top with the Americans for Tax Reform pledge, it basically says you can change the tax code, but you can't collect one more dollar. That means we're locked into this revenue. It's been proven over 12 years it yields 16.9%. We haven't run our country on that since 1959. There were 48 stars on.
Are you in? I interviewed Congressman Kind yesterday, the Democrat, who I think talks very similar to the way you talk. Are you two? Are there? We don't hear your voices a whole lot. We hear Eric Cantor. We hear John Boehner. How about you guys? Maybe rising to the fold. Is there some kind of movement to get this debate going forward?
Well, I think so, and I am a fiscal conservative. I voted for the Republican Study Committee budget, which is actually reduces spending much sharper than the House Republican budget that got so much attention in the election. So I'm ready to cut spending. My votes reflect my deep resolve to put this country on a better fiscal track. But as a businessman, I go where the numbers lead me, and a careful examination of our budget leaves me with no other conclusion mathematically that's defensible that we have to raise revenue a bit just to pay for the level of spending that we as Republicans have voted for.
Congressman Rigell, I appreciate your being with me tonight. I just want to let people know you keep referring to yourself as a businessman. I refer to you as a Ford dealer, and that's an honor in my book because I'm a car nut. You should have sold Studebakers, but you probably wouldn't be a congressman now if you had been selling Studebakers. You may not have been
proud of the
enough.
brand. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Be well. Remember the 80-year-old woman who did